During his speech in Detroit today, the same one where he insulted Detroit, Donald Trump also bragged before the city's economic club about his willingness to abandon NATO allies in the face of Russian aggression.
Does that mean that if we don't pay, you will not protect us from Russia? It used to be the Soviet Union, now it's Russia. Sort of the same thing. I said, that's what it means. I will not protect you under any form. You will not be protected.
Donald Trump was talking about NATO allies who don't spend enough percentage of their GDP on defense, and the U.S. would have to come to anyone in NATO's defense, obviously, if one of them was hit by an attacker that is in the, of course, NATO treaty. But that chapter in his first term, something that we have long heard him echo, has led some lifelong Republicans, including some of the ones who served in his administration, to say that they cannot support Donald Trump a second time. My source tonight is one of them, former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. Ambassador, I just wonder what you make of, it's not just this comment, because we've heard Donald Trump say things like this before, but it's the comment in the context of what we've learned recently from Bob Woodward's new book, which is that he and Putin have reportedly spoken at least 7 times since he left office. What do you make of the comment in light of that reporting?
Well, I think the number of times that he's spoken with Putin is in dispute. The Russians deny it. We don't have any other independent evidence. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he did. And it would simply confirm what has been evident for some time, that Trump thinks he's got a great personal relationship with Vladimir Putin, and in Trump's mind, this is consistent, whether it's Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un or other adversarial leaders like that, that if he has a good relationship personally, then the U.S. and that country have a good relationship. That's just utter nonsense. And these comments about NATO he's made before. Some of his advisors have written op-eds on how he'll interpret the NATO treaty about not defending countries that aren't spending adequately on defense. That means the end of NATO. Let's be clear. I wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal months ago. You can't defend Poland, which is spending about 3%, and if we're unfortunately driven back to the German border by the Russians, to say, excuse me, Russians, can you just pause for a moment? You can do what you want in Germany. We'll see at the French border because they're spending over 2%. It means the end of NATO. And I just make one more comment, if I may. For Republicans who believe that Trump will be okay in a second term, that he won't ditch support for Ukraine, that he won't withdraw from NATO, that he won't interpret the Treaty of Washington in a way that makes it wholly useless, it's going to be okay. Go ahead and vote for Trump if you want, but for goodness sakes, do it with your eyes open. The odds that he will withdraw from NATO are very high.
You know, if you were the National Security Advisor currently, and you found out the former president was talking directly with Putin, a hostile foreign leader who had invaded a sovereign country, as Putin has done, and that former president was not briefing anyone at your State Department or you on those conversations, what would your response be?
Well, let me say first, I think President Biden, very early in his term, made a decision that Trump would not receive any briefings of classified information, which I think makes him unique in contemporary times as a former president, not to get briefings like that just as a courtesy, so that the incumbent president, if he wanted to, could call a former president up and talk with him about crises. And I think it reflected Biden's concern, which is entirely legitimate, that Trump can't keep his mouth shut, and that he might reveal currently classified information to our adversaries. But I do want to say this about the general subject of a former American official talking to leaders of friendly foreign countries or even leaders of not so friendly foreign countries. I think it's a gross violation of the First Amendment to say that somehow the Logan Act makes that illegal. It may be imprudent, it may be unwise. In Trump's case, it may be dangerous given what he may be saying to Putin. But you got to be very careful what you say here. Otherwise, a lot of former officials are in violation of the Logan Act. I think, remember when it was passed, remember it's been prosecuted twice, so I think people need to calm down a little bit about this. Notwithstanding, I think it was ill-advised for Trump to talk to Putin if he did after he left office.
Well, and of course,
it's not illegal, and there's not a criminal conspiracy that immediately arises.
But of course, we all remember Trump wanted to prosecute John Kerry for talking to Iranian officials, even though he was briefing the State Department. But I have to ask you about this, Ambassador, because in this book from Bob Woodward, he reveals that Trump sent Putin COVID tests at the height of the pandemic. Putin didn't want anyone to know about it. According to this, he said, don't tell them, but it's worse for you than it is for me, which made us think about this book that Yasmin Abudaleb and Damian Paletta at the Washington Post wrote about the pandemic, where they quoted Trump at one point saying that he hoped that you would die from COVID, essentially. He was worried about another aide getting it. And then he said, quote, according to this book, hopefully COVID takes out John, referring to you. I mean, in light of the fact that he was sending COVID tests to Putin, how do you read that now?
Well, I'm grateful that he was thinking about me. What can I say during a crisis like COVID? Look, this is pure Trump that people are getting now. And you know, interestingly, Dmitry Peskov, who is longtime Vladimir Putin spokesman, confirmed that Trump and Putin had that conversation about. Or that Trump had given the COVID test, even as the Trump campaign was denying anything about it. So the Russians, in effect, have undercut Trump's effort to distance himself from Russia. This is the way Trump reacts to these strong authoritarian leaders. I can't analyze it psychologically, but he just likes being a big guy with big guys. They don't have to deal with, you know, independent legislatures and judiciaries and due process and all that. Just do what they want to do. That's what he wants to do, too.
Ambassador John Bolton, we are glad that you're safe tonight. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Glad to do it.